May 7, 2024. Police found Hony K body on a rural property near Taupo, dead at 23. 2 days earlier, he'd murdered a complete stranger on Auckland's Ponsonby Road. Josh Masters sits in his wheelchair today, paralyzed from the waist down. The bullet that put him there came from his best friend's gun. 5 men, 1 gang, a trail of violence that terrorized Auckland for over 2 decades. Masters was a kickboxer before he became New Zealand's most feared gang leader. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how he built an empire, and how that empire destroyed everyone who touched it. The Killer Beez story starts with brotherhood. It ends with bodies. Before we get started, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Are you in New Zealand, Australia, maybe somewhere across the world? I get messages from viewers in places I never expected, and it's always fascinating to see how these true crime stories reach people everywhere. Also, if you've heard about the Killer Beez before today, let me know what you already knew about them. Some of you might be familiar with Josh Masters' name. Others might have no idea what's coming. Either way, you're about to learn things about this gang that most people have never heard. So hit that comment section, tell me your location, and let's get into this story together. – 2003. Ōtara, South Auckland. Josh Masters had hands that could break bones in a boxing ring, clean knockout power, discipline, respect from the fighting community. He could have gone professional, he could have stayed clean. He chose a different path. Masters wasn't just some street thug who stumbled into gang life. This man had a plan. He was already vice president of the Tribesmen motorcycle club when he started recruiting young men from the housing estates of South Auckland. Kids with nothing to lose. Kids looking for family. The Killer Beez weren't supposed to be competition for the tribesmen. Masters sold it as a feeder operation. Train the young ones, test their loyalty, then move the best up to the main club. Smart business model. The tribesmen leadership bought it. What they didn't realize, Masters was building his own army. The name Killer Beez wasn't random. Bees work as a collective. They protect their hive, and when threatened, they swarm. Masters understood psychology. He understood that young men from broken homes would die for a brotherhood that accepted them. By 2004, the Killer Beez were running methamphetamine operations across Auckland. Not small-time dealing, industrial-scale manufacturing, money laundering through legitimate businesses, aggravated robberies when cash flow slowed down. These weren't gang members anymore. They were soldiers in Masters' criminal enterprise. The tribesmen started noticing. Their feeder gang was making serious money. Too much money. The partnership that started with handshakes and respect was turning into something else. Suspicion, competition, jealousy. Masters had created exactly what he wanted. An organization loyal to him, not the tribesman patch. But success comes with a price in the gang world. And Josh Masters had no idea his closest ally would put a bullet in his spine. May 24th, 2022, 11:47 p.m., Henderson, West Auckland. Joshua Baker and 2 other Killer Beez members pulled up outside a quiet suburban home. They thought they were targeting a tribesman gang member. They were wrong. Inside that house was a young mother and her 2 small children, an infant, an 8-year-old boy, both asleep. Baker didn't care. 4 gunshots shattered the night. 4 bullets ripped through the walls of a family home. 1 bullet missed the mother's head by inches. The children woke up screaming. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated terror. And it was just the beginning of the most violent month in Auckland's gang history. Earlier that same night, Baker had already hit another house in Flatbush. 8 shotgun blasts into a tribesman member's property. When the targets shot back, Baker's crew fled in a stolen car, switching vehicles at a pre-planned meeting point. Professional. Organized. Ruthless. Desmond Hiko was with him that night. These men had turned gang warfare into a military operation. Over the next month, Auckland would see 21 shootings and 9 arsons. The Killer Beez weren't just fighting the tribesmen anymore. They were terrorizing entire neighborhoods. Vincent Toby joined the shooting spree. 3 Killer Beez members, 3 different targets, same night. They moved through Auckland like they owned it. And in their minds, they did. The police called it the worst gang violence the city had ever seen. Families were sleeping on their floors, afraid of stray bullets. Children couldn't play outside. Normal people were caught in a war they never asked for. But here's what the public didn't understand. This wasn't about territory. It wasn't about drugs. This violence had roots that went back years, back to a friendship that turned toxic, back to brotherhood that became betrayal. What happened next would turn former brothers into enemies forever. April 2019, Harley-Davidson dealership Auckland. Josh Masters walked into that showroom, thinking he was meeting a friend. Okusichi no Te had been his closest ally for years. Sergeant-at-arms for the tribesmen, the man Masters trusted with his life. Te was waiting for him. One gunshot. The bullet hit Masters in the spinal cord. The man who built the Killer Beez with his fists, he'd never walk normally again, never fight again, never be the same. Masters collapsed between the motorcycles, bleeding out on the showroom floor. Te walked away. 20 years of friendship ended with 9 millimeters of lead and a lifetime of paralysis. But here's where this story gets strange. Masters didn't want revenge. He didn't order his gang to hunt Te down. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone who knew him. He forgave him. Publicly. Think about that for a second. Your best friend shoots you in the spine, leaves you in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, and you forgive him? In the gang world, that's not mercy. That's weakness. And weakness gets people killed. Masters' forgiveness wasn't about being the bigger man. It was about psychology. He knew that revenge would mean war. All-out war between the Killer Beez and tribesmen. War meant police attention. Police attention meant prison time for everyone. So Masters played the long game. He forgave Te, called for peace, and waited. But his soldiers? They didn't forgive. They didn't forget. And they sure as hell didn't want peace. The younger members, like Joshua Baker and Desmond Hiko, saw Masters in that wheelchair and felt something their leader couldn't control. Rage. The kind of rage that doesn't listen to forgiveness speeches. The kind that loads guns and drives to enemy houses at midnight. Masters thought his public forgiveness would end the conflict. Instead, it started something worse. His own gang members stopped listening to him. They wanted blood for their leader's blood, and they didn't care who got caught in the crossfire. But forgiveness wouldn't stop the bloodbath coming to Auckland. 14 years old, that's how young Hony K Selwyn was when he first put on Killer Beez colors. Most kids that age are worried about homework and video games. Hony was worried about survival. School was hell for him. Bullies made every day a nightmare. He'd come home with bruises, torn clothes, broken spirit. His classmates saw weakness. The Killer Beez saw potential. Gang recruitment isn't random. They target kids who hurt. Kids who need family. Kids will do anything for acceptance. Hony fit the profile perfectly. Angry, isolated, desperate for belonging. The Killer Beez offered him something school never could. Respect. Protection. Brothers who'd fight for him. So he dropped out. Why sit in classrooms where people tormented you when you could run with men who feared nothing? The gang became his education, his family, his identity. For years, Hony lived that life. Small crimes at first, then bigger ones. In 2020, he assaulted a stranger outside a strip club in Taupo. 5 months community detention. The courts thought he was low risk. They were wrong. May 5, 2024. Ponsonby Road, Auckland. 10:30 p.m. Hony tried to get into a bar. The bouncer said no. Simple as that. Most people would walk away angry, maybe curse a little, find another place to drink. But Hony wasn't most people anymore. Years in the Killer Beez had taught him that disrespect meant violence. Robert Sidney Horn was walking down the street. Wrong place, wrong time. He didn't know Hony. Hony didn't know him. They'd never met, never spoken, never had any reason to interact. That didn't matter. Hony pulled out a gun and shot Robert dead. Cold blood. No warning, no argument. Just death. Because a young man who joined a gang for protection had learned to solve problems with bullets. The son of filmmaker Don Selwyn, the kid who just wanted to belong somewhere, had become a killer. But the story doesn't end with Robert's murder. 2 days later, police would find K. Selwyn's body. Justice came slowly, but it came. Joshua Baker got 4.5 years in prison. The judge didn't mince words. Premeditated violence, reckless endangerment of children, complete disregard for innocent life. Baker had turned suburban neighborhoods into war zones, and the courts made sure he paid for it. Desmond Hiko received 4 years and 7 months. Same crimes, same consequences. The man who shot at a house where an infant was sleeping learned that bullets don't discriminate between gang members and babies. Vincent Toby joined them behind bars. Similar sentence, similar crimes. 3 men who thought they were untouchable found out that terrorizing Auckland came with a price. But prison sentences don't undo trauma. The families who lived through those nights, they still flinch at car doors slamming. Children who heard gunshots through their bedroom walls still have nightmares. Communities that used to feel safe started locking doors and closing curtains. The police response was massive. Operation after operation targeting Killer Beez members and associates. Over 20 vehicles seized in a single sweep. Multiple arrests, constant surveillance. They monitored K. Selwyn's funeral, watching for gang members who might cause trouble. Auckland had enough. Politicians demanded action. Community leaders held meetings. Parents demanded protection for their children. The gang violence had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Fear became a daily reality for people who never chose this war. Mothers walking children to school took different routes to avoid gang territories. Business owners installed security cameras and hired guards. Normal life stopped being normal. The Killer Beez had achieved something no gang wants. They'd made themselves the primary target of every law enforcement agency in New Zealand. Success in the criminal world means staying invisible. They'd become the most visible gang in the country. Prison sentences, police raids, public outrage, community fear. It seemed like the Killer Beez story was ending with handcuffs and concrete cells. But Master's story wasn't over. 2025. Josh Masters sits in his wheelchair still making headlines. Child endangerment charges. A dangerous ride incident that put a young person at risk. The man who built the Killer Beez hasn't learned. Age hasn't mellowed him. Paralysis hasn't stopped him. That's the thing about criminal minds. They don't retire because their bodies fail. Masters can't walk, but he can still think. Still plan. Still influence the young men who see him as a legend. Right now, as you're watching this video, police are investigating active Killer Beez operations. The gang didn't die when their members went to prison. It adapted. New recruits replaced the old ones. New crimes replaced the solved ones. The cycle continues. Gang recruitment works the same way it did when Hony K. Selwyn was 14. Find the broken kids. Find the angry ones. Find the ones who need family so desperately, they'll kill for it. Promise them belonging. Promise them respect. Promise them power. Then watch them destroy their lives for those promises. The psychology never changes. Young men with absent fathers look for strong male figures. Kids getting bullied at school want protection. Teenagers from poor families want money and status. Gangs offer all of that. The price? Everything. But here's what makes the Killer Beez recruitment so effective. They don't just target random kids. They study them, watch them. Wait for the perfect moment when a young person is at their most vulnerable. Failed a test, got beaten up, parents fighting at home. That's when gang members appear. Not as predators, but as saviors. They offer rides to school, buy them food, give them phones. Small gifts that feel like love to kids who get nothing at home. Before the teenager realizes what's happening, they owe favors. Small ones at first. Hold this package. Deliver this message. Watch for police. Then the favors get bigger and more dangerous. And by the time the kid wants out, they're in too deep. They know too much. They've done too much. Leaving means risking everything they've built, everyone they've grown to call family. Masters understood this formula better than most. He wasn't just recruiting gang members. He was recruiting sons. Boys who'd call him father and die for his approval. That kind of loyalty doesn't disappear when the leader gets shot. He created a system that doesn't need him to survive. Lower-level members recruit their own replacements. Veterans train the newcomers. The organization feeds itself, grows itself, protects itself. Masters built a machine that runs without him. Current intelligence suggests the Killer Beez are still active in South Auckland, still recruiting, still running operations. The names change, but the structure Masters built remains. Like a virus that mutates, but never dies. Police sources won't say this on record, but they'll tell you privately. The Killer Beez today are more organized than they were in Masters' prime. More careful, more professional. They learn from every arrest, every raid, every mistake. Evolution through adversity. They've adapted their recruitment to social media. Instagram posts showing money and cars. TikTok videos glamorizing gang life. Snapchat messages targeting specific kids who post about problems at home. The methods change, but the targets stay the same. Vulnerable children looking for family. Here's what law enforcement won't tell you publicly. Masters might be in a wheelchair, but his influence hasn't decreased. If anything, the shooting made him more powerful. Gang members see him as a martyr, a leader who survived betrayal, a man who forgave his enemies instead of destroying them. That forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was the smartest move he ever made. It turned him into a legend. Think about it from a gang member's perspective. Your leader gets shot by his best friend, and instead of ordering revenge, he forgives. That's not normal. That's godlike. That's the kind of story that gets told in prison cells and on street corners for decades. Every conversation about Masters ends the same way. He could have had Tay killed, but he chose mercy. That mercy makes him seem bigger than human, bigger than the violence that defines gang life. It makes young men want to follow him even more. The bullet that paralyzed Josh Masters was supposed to end his story. Instead, it wrote his legacy. Every young man who joins the Killer Beez today knows that story, knows that their founder was betrayed by his best friend and survived, knows that real power isn't about walking, it's about commanding respect from a wheelchair. New recruits get told that story on their first day. Masters in his wheelchair, still giving orders, still commanding respect, still dangerous. The message is clear. Physical power is temporary, mental power is forever. And that 2025 child endangerment case, that wasn't Masters losing control. That was Masters proving he's still capable of violence, still willing to risk everything for his reputation, still the same man who built the Killer Beez from nothing. 22 years after Masters founded the Killer Beez, Auckland is still dealing with the consequences. Families are still afraid. Communities are still scarred. Young men are still choosing guns over education, gangs over family, violence over peace. The ripple effects never stop. Kids who grew up hearing gunshots become adults who teach their children to hit the floor when cars backfire. Teachers who worked in gang-affected schools carry trauma for decades. Police officers who responded to those shootings still jump at loud noises. Social workers report seeing children as young as 10 wearing Killer Beez colors, 10 years old, still learning multiplication tables, but already learning which streets belong to which gangs, already being groomed for a life that will likely end in prison or death.